Welcome to the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. Figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. I don't know why, but it looks like we've got a haze in the room. Okay. Got a lighting thing going on. Well, that's fun. All right. Welcome into the show. It is a Monday. It's a marvelous Monday, unless you're an Eagles fan who's hoping for the number 2 seed, in which case you're probably not that thrilled today because, good job, Kevin Patullo. Good job, Nick Sirianni. You killed the joy. You took away all the things that we wanted and believed in, and you decided to throw them away for what? For what exactly, Kevin Patullo? For what exactly, Nick Sirianni? Rest. Okay. Better hope that works. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see if it pays off. We are going to go out to the comments as the show gets going here. I see them. My camera is in flux. Look at that. We can't do a whole show like this. Hold on. Watch this. Ready? Check this out. 1, 2, 3. Da, 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 da. No better. All right. Well, we're going to have a heck of a show today. This is going to be fun. All right. Welcome in. We have a lot to get to. Obviously, the Eagles and what happened with the number 2 seed, now the number 3 seed. We've got to get into that. We'll obviously talk about what's been happening with the Philadelphia 76ers, who absolutely picked apart a Knicks team that, yes, I know the Knicks were on the second half of back-to-back, three games of 4 nights, all that, but Sixers looked really, really good against the Knicks. We've got some updates from Flyers World, including Matvei Michkov not on the ice today. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, World Juniors, you've got Porter Martone and young Jack Berglund both having nice tournaments. Obviously, Martone's Canadian team is out. Berglund's Swedish team continuing. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show as well. Don Mattingly hired as the bench coach for the Philadelphia Phillies, and now everybody's trying to connect Don Mattingly and a good relationship that he apparently has with one Bo Bichette as being something that is worth keeping an eye on if you are a Philadelphia Phillies fan. So we're going to get to all of that and a lot more. There's just so much to do today. And we actually have a good amount of time today. Now, I will tell you that I've been actively looking at times to set this show as part of a regularly scheduled time. I have a very good idea for a time that I think is going to work going forward. However, I will be doing the show from Europe for about a week and a half. So I'm not exactly sure how the timing is going to work out. So I'm not going to commit to anything until I get back from, Austria and Spain. When I get back from there, then we'll have a conversation about, regular times. But we are going to do shows from Europe, so fear not. I'm already in negotiations with the Austrian and the Spanish governments to do some pretty cool stuff. That's not true. That's actually not true at all. Let's not set the expectations high on something that can't happen. You know what else can't happen? We can't go any further without the comments being up on the screen. So we're going to go out to the comments. We're going to have a little chitty chat today. We'll talk about all your Philly teams. We are not going to talk much about it, but I'm assuming if you're a Union fan, you saw that Kai Wagner in his first game for Birmingham recorded an assist in the first half, and his coach, his manager, raved about the effort, about how in shape he was, about how he wanted to be in the lineup, about what a great job he did shutting down one of the best forwards in the championship. And, oh, by the way, the added bonus of an assist in his first game. We wish Kai Wagner the absolute best. Man, I have no idea how the Union are going to fill that hole, but good for him. Chris Freed says, Russ, what will you do when Delta Force busts in your bedroom at 2 a.m.? Do you notice that I don't just have the mustache today? A big part of that is I'm afraid of being confused with Maduro. Yeah, I know. You might say to yourself, Russ, you are somewhat racially ambiguous. I know. I'm a little bit concerned. If I go just mustache, I'm worried of what will happen. If somebody busts into my room at 2 a.m. in the morning, I'm going to be very upset. All right. The only people allowed to bust in my room at 2 a.m. are my kids. And even then, I'm not happy about it. All right. Now, if, you got a kid having a little vomit situation at 2 in the morning, please run to the bathroom and yell. Don't come busting in my door. You know how many times when you have 4 kids, you know how many times you have a kid who runs to your room to tell you they have to throw up and then they just throw up at the door? Yeah, it's more than you want. It is. Has it happened in this house? Indeed it has. Am I thrilled about it? No, I'm not. They're the only ones who are allowed to bust in at 2 a.m. Anybody else, just wait until 9 or something before, you start busting in, okay? Respectfully. Ford is here, says, nuance, a great word in the English language. Eagles resting starters to a degree would have been okay, but as an example, rest Jalen, you give Tanner no one to throw to. Also, our on defense, our linebackers were stuck in cement. Old ass Fred Johnson juked out Ringo and ran his 50-yard old ass into the end zone like he was Pat Mahomes. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too. Yeah, I actively try on this show, right, to not delve into full-on hyperbole. I really do. I try my very best, and I know sometimes my best isn't good enough, but I do try to not go full-on hot take, even though sometimes it would be really, really easy. But I do have some significant frustration with the decision to rest the starters on Sunday and what that ultimately could mean for the Eagles' chance of getting back to a Super Bowl or winning it. We will get there in a little bit. Nick Abe says, yo, Russ, hello. Ford says Nick is a cheerleader, not a coach. Nick Abe agrees. I'm pretty sure these two had beef going in the comments last week. Nice to see some people coming together. Freed also says New Year, same lateness. Yeah. What do we expect? Let's see. Nick Abe says schedule for Eagles next year looks easy. We could actually take a quick gander at it. I'm not at a point right now where I'm ready to look ahead to next year, but we will, just for the sake of doing an exercise on the show, to take a Kevin Kincaidism here. We will just really quick do an exercise here, looking at the Eagles' opponents for the 26-27 season. So let's take down the comments here for a sec. All right, so Eagles' opponents. Home, you have your division, of course. They're going to host the Rams, host the Seahawks, host the Panthers, who have turned it around, host the Texans, CJ Stroud, host the Colts, and if Aaron Rodgers is still alive and kicking in the NFL, they'll host Aaron Rodgers. They're on the road against the Cardinals, which should be winnable, the Niners, which will be a difficult game out there, at the Bears. Bears have had a really nice season. You'd assume that they're going to have a strong offseason and be a really legit team in the NFC next year. The Jags, who won the AFC South, and the Titans, the Titans are the Titans. I don't know if I'd say this is an easy schedule. I don't think I agree with that at all. I mean, if you just look at this on balance, right, you would assume that the Cowboys are going to at least be a passable team, and at least one of those games is going to happen before Dallas does the Dallas thing where they just kind of fall out of contention. So, like, let's say Dallas is like an okay team. The Rams are going to be a good team. The Seahawks won the West and are the number one seed in the conference. They're going to be a good team. The Panthers made the playoffs, right? They're going to probably be a pretty good team. The Texans are a good team. We don't know who's going to be the quarterback for Indy. Are they going to go back to Danny Dimes? I don't know. Pittsburgh is really hit or miss. I'm not going to count Pittsburgh as a good team. I know that the missed field goal by the Ravens sent the Steelers to the playoffs, but they haven't looked good without DK Metcalf, so I'm not ready to like add them to it. So I think I'm up to 5. The Niners are obviously going to be good. That's 6. The Bears are a good team. That's 7. The Jags are a good team. That's 8. You have at least 8 teams on there that are going to be really good teams, or at the very least passable, like better than passable teams. So I don't view this as an easy schedule. The thing that maybe works to your benefit is that of those teams, probably the strongest are some combination of the Rams, the Seahawks. I'd probably put the Texans as one of the stronger teams. You get them at home, but you do have to travel cross country to San Francisco. Should be able to win. I'm not exactly convinced that the Jags are like legit, but okay. I'd rather going on the road against them versus, taking on the Seahawks in Seattle, I guess is better. And the Bears, going on the road against the Bears isn't great. I guess it'll depend on what time of year. But yeah, I'm not like ready to say for sure that that's an easy schedule. I actually would kind of disagree with that premise and say no, that it's actually a pretty tough schedule. All right, we'll come back to it though a little bit later on. You guys can let me know if you're feeling pretty good about it or not. Let's see. Nick Abe says the Packers are a good team. I mean, they're going to be fine. We'll see how they do. Brian Knowlton with a Flyers comment says, well, clearly the Flyers won the Zamula trade. I wasn't going to talk about the Zamula thing today, but I do think it's really funny. Do you remember how, was it a month ago? Was it a month and a half ago? Igor Zamula's agent put out this idea that, Zamula is a better player than Philly has gotten to see him play as, and he's a better player than Philly would maybe give him credit for because he's been in a bad situation or whatever. There was this whole idea that Zamula could actually be a power play contributor if he were afforded the opportunity. And it's like, buddy, I know that you've got to work hard for the money and all that. And I know that you got to work hard to, make your players sound legit, but he stinks. Igor Zamula stinks. And so he got traded for Tomasino from the Penguins, who reported to the Phantoms. And Zamula apparently refused to report to the Penguins. So now they're putting him on waivers. He's on waivers today for the purposes of contract termination. So, yeah, I mean, the Flyers got back a guy who might be able to be like a decent call up at some point, or a guy who, like, at the very least should be able to come up here if there's an injury and like play competent minutes as a forward for this team. Not obviously going to be expected to be a real contributor to this team, but it's better than whatever the hell they were going to get out of Zamula, who was like number 9 or 10 on the depth chart at this point. So let's see. Dee Dee's here. Dee Dee Skinner says, good afternoon all. Hello, Dee Dee. Thanks for being here. I don't know what this is. Brian Knowlton says, oh my God, Mattingly just split his pants. Is that a thing? Was he introduced somewhere? Did he get introduced by the Phillies? Did he really split his pants? Because if he did, it's going to take me back to the, remember the SpongeBob? I just ripped my pants. It'd be pretty great. I'm like, nah, he couldn't have. He couldn't have ripped his pants, could he? I assume he's not ripped his pants. We'll get back to him in a minute. Philly fan 7181 says everyone is dismissing the Packers, but they could be tough without Micah. Instead, Eagles are playing a team that played cupcakes and racked up big numbers. So Philly fan, obviously here, is not sold on the Niners being legitimate threats. So we will talk about that here in a wee bit as well. AJ's here, says, oh my God, I made it to a live one. Happy New Year, fella. Hope it's peaceful with everyone back in school. Today is a great day. Can we just take a moment here? Hey, if you've been working from home and you have kids and or a spouse and they've all been home over the Christmas break, the winter solstice break, the Hanukkah break, the Kwanzaa break, the whatever you want to call it break, today, January 5th, 2026, might be the happiest day of your year so far. Everybody's out of the house, which means that all of the work from home people got to get back into their regular routine. This house is clean. This house hasn't been clean in about a week and a half. I took the time this morning. I got things straightened up. My wife is going to come home to a clean house. Oh, Russ, doesn't she clean? Of course she does. But you know what I am? I'm a good husband. I am. You know what I do as a good husband? I try to make some simple things work, right? I try to make sure that this house is in order so that when she gets back, it's one less thing to have on that stressed out plate, because I'm working from home and I have my own inherent stress of working, but she also goes out and works a full day. When she comes home, she deserves to come back to a house that's not a total disaster. Now, my kids will also come home to a very clean house, and they will probably not appreciate any of it, and they'll trash it by the time it's bedtime. And I will be very upset, and we will instruct the older ones to clean up, and they will push back and say, I didn't make that mess. And, well, we're not going to make the 2-year-old clean everything up now, are we? But everybody's out of the house, and it was a pretty peaceful day in this house. So I hope each and every one of you also found peace. But I have to give an update really quickly. I don't know if it came up in the comments yet or not, but I do have an update. You may recall that on Friday's show, we were having a fun time. We were chatting it up, and my wife got in the comments of the video and said, our TV is broken. Our living room TV is broken. Now, many of you may say to yourself, well, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad. And you might be right. Except on Friday, I said, you know what? I could take the easy way. The easy way would be, because I've wanted to get a new TV upstairs for a good long while. I was like, you know what? I could take the easy win, and I could go up there and say, yep, looks broken, and go buy a new TV. But again, this is part of the being a good husband thing. I said, all right. My wife went to another room. I went in the living room. I did a hard reset on everything. TV was functional. Must have been a hardware glitch. It's okay. Doesn't matter, right? So I tell her that, and I say, hey, I think that we probably do need to get a new TV, though, because this one is like working at a snail's pace, and it does feel like it's inevitable that this thing is going to break once and for all. And so we decide that we're going to hold off on buying a new TV until the time presents itself that we don't have much of a choice. Now, again, I'm going to be going away for work, and the last thing my wife needs is for the TV to not work, right? She's not going to put the kids on screens a lot. But like when you want to have that as a backup, you want to make sure that it works. So I take my daughter to Costco on Sunday. I run into Jose Nunez, the fantastic Philadelphia Union writer. We run into each other at Costco. I won't tell you which Costco, but it was one of them. We ran into each other at Costco, and I said, yeah, you know, I might have to end up on TV at some point, but I'm holding off for now. So my daughter and I go through, we get everything that we need at the store. And as we are getting ready to leave, I get a text from my wife, and she says, the TV is broken again. And I said, how bad is it? She sends me a video. Now we don't just have a purple line going across the screen. Now we have green boxes and like picture in picture of the same app. And I'm like, yeah, that's not good. I could reset it again, but that's really not good. So I said, do you want me to buy a TV? She said, go ahead and buy a TV. So I bought a TV. I don't know how I got this home in our SUV, but I bought a 75-inch TV. It's not the nicest 75-inch TV in the world. The nicest one is in our basement. But I went and I bought a 75-inch TV. And I put it up, and my kids came back in, and they looked in the living room, and they were befuddled at the size of this TV. Now, again, we have a 77-inch TV in our basement. Lovely. They come upstairs, 75-inch TV in the living room. Blessed, right? We go through all of the software updates. I'm freaking out because YouTube TV isn't working the way that it's supposed to. Then I realize everything was just updating. We finish out the night watching the Eagles game, getting frustrated with the Eagles. My wife and I watch some new show that's on Netflix, like another British crime drama thing. We'll see. It doesn't make a lot of sense in the first episode. But we got to take in what it looks like in that living room with a 75-inch TV. And I've been saying for a while to my wife, a 55-inch TV is too small. 75 fits. It makes sense. So let this be a sign to those of you who have been in a back and forth with your respective spouse or significant other. If you've been saying, hey, this wall is too big to only have a 55-inch TV, the day will come where that TV will break. And either your spouse will say, we are not putting a new TV in here, in which case, I'm sorry, or that TV will break and your spouse will finally give in. You know how I got my wife to accept the idea of a 75, by the way? We have a big TV center thing, right? Lower one. And I showed her a couple days ago what it would look like to put an 85-inch TV in the living room. And I was like, it's actually going to go beyond this big thing. She was like, oh, I said, yeah, but if we do a 75, fits pretty nicely. And she's like, a 75 would be okay. Now, if I brought up a 75-inch TV 2 days prior to that, just to say, hey, what if we do a 75? She'd be like, no. But because I started with an 85 and then said, oh, but a 75 seems much more doable. It's all up here. All right, that's your marriage advice for the episode. Greg Bondarenko's here, says, shout out to Denver Barkey scoring his first NHL goal on Saturday. Barkey's looks so good, man. It's hard. It'd be really, really hard to say anything negative about Denver Barkey at this point. He just continues to prove that he belongs, and it's really, really cool. Connor Buss says, good afternoon. As long as your power stays on, you can escape to your bunker. I don't know. Who's got a bunker? I don't have a bunker. Who has a bunker? Connor Buss says the Wagner deal is unfortunate, but he'll thrive in the championship. Those Brits love to dismiss MLS and the Yanks. They do, but pretty hard to complain with an assist in that first game. All right, we're going to get to the Eagles here in a second. Connor Buss says, I think McKee would have been better with the starters, but it was a stupid move from Sirianni. All right, we're going to get there in a sec. Let me see. Is there anything else that I wanted to get to over here? Amadeo referred to the Steelers as the perennial 9-8 Super Bowl Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think that's going to happen. AJ says Zamula somehow thinks he's the best defenseman in the NHL. He wasn't even the best D in Scranton. Yeah. Jim Cochran comes in here, says it's a given the Birds should have played the starters, but can we talk about why the coaches would let the backup quarterback throw the ball 40 times? They were having some success running the ball. Don't worry. I have some numbers around that. I do. I have some numbers around it. You're going to see I'm going to lose my mind. Legitimately. When we go over the numbers here, you're going to want to pull your hair out. And if you're bald, you're going to want to grow hair back just for the purpose of ripping it out of your skull. Let's see. Connor Buss says week 3 work from home, but my wife was on winter break. Our daughter's sick and our friend is babysitting her right now while I work. Well, I hope your daughter feels better. I'll tell you what, there are a lot of people with a lot of sick kids. This winter break, I think, was the sickest this house has ever been. We had like different bouts of fevers and the flu, and our son, like our one kid, like his leg just like started giving out, probably an after effect of an infection or of a virus or whatever. It was an insane winter break. Insane. But we all wish the best to everyone out there. And if you have kids who are sick, I hope you feel better. Greg Bondarenko called me Mrs. Doubtfire. I'll take that. Hello! Philly fan says, Russ doing the cleaning looks like he'll be busting in the bedroom at 2 a.m. I'm going to be busting in the bedroom, yeah. 2 a.m. Didi says, you just made my husband say, yes, I'm bad. He's not. He's amazing. Well, good on you, Didi. You found a good one. Let's see. Oh, ZT Bros here says, happy Monday, Russ. Thank you, ZT Bro. Hello. Welcome on in. Okay. Let's see. ZT Bro said, or Z2 Bro? I think it's Z2 Bro. Says, I'm just hyped to see so many of our prospects doing well in World Juniors. Runin, Martone, Berglund, future is bright. I agree. We'll get there in a second. Okay. There was a Maduro joke? Oh, it was a Maduro joke. That was the 2 a.m., the busting in 2 a.m. All right, now I got it. Okay. All right, let's talk about the Eagles game. Okay. And by the way, shout out to Video Guy Amadeo for the last episode. He wrote down those timestamps and added them to the YouTube video. So I hope all those of you who watch after the fact on YouTube were very appreciative and grateful that he went out of his way to do the timestamps. What a great guy that Amadeo is. Okay. This Eagles game, okay? This Eagles game had me mad. But I'm not going to go hyperbolic. I could yell. Do you want me to yell? I could yell. Kevin Patullo's a fraud. Nick Sirianni's a moron. Okay, we could do that. We could. But you know what? Nothing's going to change, right? Here's the disappointing thing, right? You go into week 18. There is a very clear path and a very feasible path to getting the number 2 seed. And oddly, like Nick Sirianni kind of like went into the game making it sound like they didn't really care if they were the 2 seed or the 3 seed. And then after they lose this game, he also just kind of came out and he was like, well, the rest was more important than the seeding. But then also kind of like noted how successful the Eagles have been at home. So if you really care about how good this team has been at home in the playoffs under Sirianni, you should have wanted 2 home playoff games, which is what you theoretically would have had if you were the number 2 seed. You would get that wild card game and play the Packers and likely win. And then you would host a team in the second round in the divisional round. And then you would hope that the Seahawks, who are the number 1 seed, would lose in the divisional round. And then you'd get to host the NFC Championship. There'd be 3 playoff games. And then you go off to the Super Bowl on a neutral site and you feel good about it. But that's not what happened because Nick Sirianni decided that rest was more important than anything else. Now, on the surface, I don't actually disagree with the premise that this Eagles team needed rest. Let us not forget, this Eagles team this season on short weeks has looked horrific. I mean, unbelievably bad on a short week. So the idea that Sirianni wanted to give his guys as much rest as possible, essentially give them a bye week before the wild card round, I could get behind. In fact, I wasn't even that upset with the idea in principle. The thing that I wasn't really sure of was, the Lions were going to play hard for Dan Campbell, but I didn't know, like, were the Lions going to play so hard and really enjoy playing that spoiler role against the Bears that they would go out there and, bust their ass the way that they did and win the game. Well, it became pretty clear, right, early in that game, Detroit took a lead, and then eventually the game gets tied up. And then you get to a point where there's enough time left in the Eagles game where you're able to see Detroit kicks a field goal, wins the game. And the Eagles are down by 7 points. And I don't expect that at that point in the game, Nick Sirianni is going to say, all right, Devontae, you were in to start the game. Go back out there. A.J. Brown, you haven't played yet. Go out there. Saquon, you haven't played yet. Go out there. Hey, Jalen, go out there, win us the game. Get us to overtime, and then let's go get the number 2 seed. I didn't think that was going to happen. It would have been pretty insane for that to happen. You would have had a bunch of guys who were cold, right? Physically, not like Burr, the temperature's cold, but like guys that weren't warmed up. Putting them out there didn't make a lot of sense. And even in the case of Devontae, who started the game, which we'll talk about in a second, having that big of a gap between his last snap in the game and then having him go in for like the final drive of regulation never made sense to me. Now, do I think that the Eagles would have gone for a 2-point conversion and the win and the number 2 seed if they had tied the game at regulation? I kind of think they would have. I don't think that you sit your starters and run the risk of legitimate injury to even some of your backups. Like the defensive line, it felt like was gassed by the end of this game. The offensive line felt like they were pretty gassed by the end of the game. I kind of think that this would have come down to a 2-point conversion. You either would have gotten the 2 seed or not, and then people would have criticized that decision. I do think that the calculus on the 2 seed versus 3 seed has to change a little bit in real time as you watch Detroit kick that field goal to give to pick up the win against the Bears and give you a very open, viable pathway to the number 2 seed. I do think that it is a miscalculation that the Eagles didn't roll the starters out there for a quarter or so, get up to a bigger lead, and then do the typical Sirianni thing. You have a lead, and now let's just ride it out to the end of the game. I think that was a mistake, right? I think that if you had known, right, if Detroit and Chicago had played on Saturday, or if they had played in the 1:00 window, and you entered a 4:25 start on Sunday, knowing that there is a legitimate path, if Sirianni at that point had decided, still doesn't matter, we're resting the starters, there's a good chance I would have said that seemed silly, right? Because again, to me, it all comes down to the importance of home field advantage. This team has yet to win a playoff game on the road with Nick Sirianni as their head coach. They have made 2 Super Bowls under Nick Sirianni, winning at home in the playoffs. So I'm not feeling too great about the home road split in terms of results, right? But it's hard because on one hand, I go, all right, the health of the team is what matters. This offensive line has just been beaten down and battered all season. Cam Jurgens hasn't looked healthy. Dickerson hasn't looked healthy. You're hopefully going to have Lane Johnson back for the playoffs. You don't want something to happen to Fred Johnson. You certainly don't want anything to happen to Mailata. I understand not wanting to play those guys. Here's where I ran into a legitimate, it was a legitimate mind exercise that I felt my brain shorting out. Here's my problem. Devontae Smith started this game. Devontae Smith played snaps in this game with the ability and the goal of getting to 1,000 yards receiving on the season, and he succeeded. If it was so important to sit the starters, why did Devontae Smith play in this game at all? For an arbitrary number, for 1,000 yards. And if the answer is because Devontae Smith has like some kind of incentive in his contract, just pay out the incentive. You know, there's part of me that sits back and says, couldn't the Eagles have done that last year with Saquon? Like, 1,000 yards is an arbitrary number for Devontae Smith. Saquon theoretically had the rushing record in sight. Last year, Sirianni essentially told Saquon, unless you like really make a case for playing, we're going to sit you and the rest of the starters. The idea that like Devontae Smith was sent out there to go get 1,000 yards, I thought was interesting. I thought it was somewhat hypocritical by the coach. Devontae Smith said after the game, he felt like Sirianni was pushing more for him to go out and get that 1,000-yard mark than he wanted to get it himself. Like, I'm sure that it's probably cool to be able to, do the 1,000-yard target, reach it, right? It's another nice milestone. Devontae Smith is a legitimate number 1 wideout on a lot of teams. He just happens to be the 1A receiver with A.J. Brown lined up on the other side. But to me, it's like an oddly hypocritical thing. We don't want our starters to get hurt, but then you're going to put Devontae Smith in harm's way. Devontae Smith could have taken a bad hit in this game and been unavailable for the wild card round. Then where would you be? He could have taken an even worse hit and been out for 2 rounds. Then where would you have been? He could have ended his season. Then where would you have been? All to go chase the 1,000 yards. What are we doing? You didn't want to run the risk last year of letting Saquon go after history. And I get it. It was a higher threshold to reach. But it was against a team that he had also carved up and voluntarily removed himself from a game earlier in the season. Methinks that Saquon might have figured out a way to break the record. You didn't want to do that a year ago, but here you are this year, essentially kind of pushing your player to go out and get his 1,000-yard season. I don't know. I thought it was really, really weird. Truly, I thought it was a very odd decision. I didn't fully get it, but I like Devontae Smith a lot. And I think Devontae Smith has been an absolute model citizen as a team, as a teammate, right? And as a player that represents the city of Philadelphia, he's been fantastic. So if Devontae wanted to go to the 1,000-yard season, or if Devontae was open to going to get the 1,000-yard season, it's fine. But it's kind of hard to then look at it and say, all right, you wanted all of your starters to sit. Well, then why is he playing? Okay. That was my problem. That was the one that I went, it's kind of weird. A little bit strange. Chris Reed says, the injuries that would have resulted from putting in those players gold. I mean, Nick Abbey is kind of right here. Says, imagine if A.J. Brown got hurt if he played. Yeah, it's the same idea. Jim Grasso says, they should have played the starters for the first quarter. That would have been enough to get an adequate lead. Maybe. I mean, we've seen the Eagles get early leads in games, and it's entirely possible that they could have gotten out to a big lead and then gone into Sirianni mode where they get overly conservative and forget how to score. That is possible, right? Let's see. Amadeo thinks that it was a slap in the face to Saquon to allow Devontae Smith to go after that 1,000-yard, but not let Saquon go after the rushing last year. Nick Abe says he wanted the 1,000. He wants to be a Hall of Famer. Maybe. Could be. I don't know. Chris says Barkley is not going to make the Hall of Fame, and not getting that record will be the difference. I'm not sure that he doesn't make the Hall of Fame. Let's see where his career goes for the next few years before we make that determination. I would think he's been one of the best players in football, especially at his position, for an extended period of time. I think he's got a very legitimate case to the Hall of Fame, and helped the Eagles win a Super Bowl, putting up the second most rushing yards in a single season. I tend to think he'll be in the Hall of Fame. Ford says it's inconsistent and mixed messaging. Again, to me, sure, start Tanner, but who the F is he throwing to? Big Dom? Well, he had Devontae early. He had Dotson. Listen, people can roll their eyes at the idea of Dotson, but Dotson's made some really big catches for this team as like the third wideout on the roster. He has made some big catches on the end of a Jalen Hurts dime, right? It has happened. Dotson's not a bad receiver. Cooper's not a bad receiver. Like, he had Calcaterra, who I don't think is a particularly great tight end, but like can make some plays happen in the passing game. You had Tank Bigsby playing behind you, right? If you're McKee, Bigsby rushed like an absolute madman, and we're going to talk about him in a second because that's one of the biggest points of contention I have. So we'll see. I want to go back. Here, okay. Landros wants to make the devil's advocate argument here. I don't like sitting starters, but I like Super Bowls. Sirianni has earned some trust in his decisions, no? Yeah. I think within reason, yeah. It doesn't make it any easier. Like, I remember being really worked up last year about not letting Saquon go for history because you don't know if you're going to win the Super Bowl, but you're pretty confident you could have had the rushing record. I don't know. Okay. I want to go out to some of the stuff that did piss me off from this game. Okay. Because there were a few. I'm going to hit you with some numbers. Okay. Here's a positive. The Eagles winning the NFC East. We talked about this when it happened, but they're the first team since the Eagles from 01 to 04 that repeated as NFC East champs. That's pretty great. What's interesting is the Eagles are the only division winner to have won the division last year as well. There were no other repeat division winners this season. If you're looking for reasons for positivity, the Eagles went 2-1 against NFC playoff bound teams this year. That should give you a little bit of hope. And they went 5-3 overall against teams that had a winning record. That's also a positive. Now, I will tell you, there is something that I found very, very upsetting in this game. And we'll shout out Jeff Kerr. Jeff Kerr's the one who put this out there. The Eagles ran 15 plays in the fourth quarter. They ran 0 run plays. The last time that Tank Bigsby carried the ball in this game was with 2 minutes and 7 seconds left in the third quarter. I want that to sink in for a second because the thing that it has felt like has continued to befuddle media and fans alike when it comes to this Eagles team is the very questionable at best decision-making, play calling of this offensive coordinator and or this head coach. The Eagles had a strong rushing attack on the day, mostly via Tank Bigsby. He was gutting the Commanders' defense time and time again, rushing hard. There was a rush in this game where he got stopped like 2.5 yards short of the first down marker, and the refs blew the whistle to call his forward progress dead, and then the Eagles kind of like pushed him to the first down. He was really worked up that he didn't get credit for the first down, and I get it. But like, Tank Bigsby probably should have, could have, would have rushed for 100+ yards in this game, but he doesn't get a single rush in the fourth quarter. His final rush is with 2 minutes and 7 seconds left in the third. I started actively wondering out loud, do the Eagles actually want to win this game? Was there something about the Packers that freaked out this coaching staff and they don't want to say publicly? Like, are they really afraid of the Packers? Because when something is working as well as this running game was working, and you have an offensive play caller and a head coach who are so risk averse, to not run the ball a single time in the fourth quarter seems insane and seems very out of sync with what the rest of the game plan was. So why didn't Bigsby rush the ball in the fourth quarter? Why? Because they fell behind? because once they saw Detroit kick a game-winning field goal, they decided that they had to put the ball in the hands of Tanner McKee, and they were really confident in Tanner McKee. Like, McKee didn't have like the worst game ever, right? But he was wildly inaccurate in the second half. He threw the ball 40 times. He was 21 of 40 for 241 yards. He had a touchdown. He also had an interception that was kind of inexcusable. It was a misread on a play. And he had, I think, 2 other balls that were dropped by the Commanders. Like, this could have been a significantly worse game for Tanner McKee. He did not look like a guy who was comfortable or confident in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. I usually at the end of a game, right, even if the Eagles offense isn't going well, I have enough trust in Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts, and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley are all so damn good. I still have the belief that even if the Eagles are losing by 7 points with a minute and a half left, I think they're going to come back because they have enough of a track record to show they can. As soon as I'm watching Tanner McKee in the second half, I'm going, this dude doesn't have it. Like, this isn't going to happen. And then in the fourth quarter, I'm like, at the very least, rush the ball with Tank Bigsby a couple of times, right? At least put the level of doubt, put a little bit of doubt into the defense's mind. They didn't do that. How many times have we talked about the fact that, like, play action is significantly more effective if you are willing to run the ball, right? If you run the ball from under center, right? Put Hurts under center, give Saquon a rush or two, then all of a sudden it opens up your play action game from under center. It's not a complicated concept, but to this offensive staff, to this offensive coordinator, to Nick Sirianni as the head coach, apparently it's like, trying to read Greek. I don't actually know what they're doing. I couldn't make heads or tails of it on Sunday. And I got to a point where I was like, they must fear Green Bay for some reason. That has to be it. Because otherwise there is no reason to have only put the ball in Tanner McKee's hands, especially in that fourth quarter. No reason whatsoever. That was crazy. Let's see. This is a good point too. Landra says, I was on a plane on the ride home. Hard to follow the game on my phone. Penalties on the DBs sucked. Patullo continues to justify me with his overall job of performance. The DBs thing, like Kelly Ringo, man. I don't know how this guy has a job after this year with this team. I don't know how this guy finds a legitimate job in the NFL next year in any place of prominence. There's a play in this game. Commanders quarterback rolls out to the left. It's the only line of defense between him and the goal line is Ringo. Ringo has no help to his right. All it takes is a quick look to the side to see, nobody's there. And instead of trying to contain the quarterback and prevent him from scoring a potential game-leading touchdown, Ringo looks at him and then turns in and chases after a receiver and essentially concedes the touchdown. Do we need to look into Ringo for betting on the game? The hell was that play? Made no sense. Effectively gave up a touchdown on purpose, or made such a stupid decision that it effectively gave up a touchdown on purpose. It was bad. 456 UConn says, true, we threw the game. Packers win next week, and we play them at home anyway. That could happen. All right, so maybe we'll look for the positive. Jim Cochran says, Tank Bigsby should get more runs with the starters. He's been good since they got him. I agree. I mean, listen, there have been weeks where he hasn't touched the ball a lot. There have been some weeks where he seems to be a really good change of pace back. I think he's a good player. So we'll see. Nick Abe says, if the Packers win, they go to Seattle. Is that true? Let me think about it. Okay. Let's see. Jim Cochran says the Ringo play rivaled Todd Pinkston's alligator arms. It was pretty bad. It was a bad play. All right. I have another number for you in case there's somebody in your family who's just like, hey, Tanner McKee still deserves a look. If you were in the Tanner McKee truther camp this whole year, I get that the line was a backup line. I get that the receivers weren't, they weren't A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith the whole game, right? But McKee only completed 2 passes under pressure on the day. He had 12 attempts. He only completed 2 of those passes. He averaged 3.6 yards per throw and had a 42.0 passer rating under pressure. That's bad, very bad, friends. That's piss poor. To put it in a nice way, that's piss poor. It's not going to get the job done. If Tanner McKee has even a remotely passable game on Sunday, the Eagles are the number 2 seed. This is actually where like Sirianni isn't going to trash his backup quarterback, but the truth of it all is if Tanner McKee plays a better game, the Eagles are the number 2 seed. It shouldn't have mattered that the Eagles were playing all their backups on Sunday. It should not have mattered at all. Legitimately, it should not have mattered. And yet it did because McKee was that bad, especially in the second half. All right. That's that. Now, I want to go out to a couple of things that are happening with the other teams. Let's start with a little bit of notable news today, which, of course, was that Don Mattingly was hired to be the bench coach. This is like one of the worst kept secrets, I think, in all of Major League Baseball. This is a thing that I think everybody expected to happen when he left Toronto, was that he was going to find his way to Philadelphia, and the Phillies made it official today. So Don Mattingly will become the bench coach. Apparently he has a really good relationship, good rapport with Rob Thompson, which is lovely. But the thing that's actually more interesting is that apparently there are people that are trying to make the, not comparison, but are trying to kind of draw the line that Mattingly also has a very good relationship with Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette. An excellent relationship, according to John Heyman. And if that's the case, well, I would like to believe that perhaps it could benefit the Phillies, who have a largely underwhelming offseason behind them so far and haven't really done a whole lot to change the makeup of this lineup. But this was John Heyman earlier today, and I said the other day, John Heyman seems like he's doing a lot of agent speak when Bichette comes up. But he said Mattingly has a terrific long-standing relationship with Phillies manager Rob Thompson. He's also said to have an excellent relationship with star free agent Bo Bichette, although it is fair to say that coaches and managers don't usually determine 9-figure free agent signings. It's weird. I don't know if John Heyman and the agent are just like besties if he's trying to like do some cover for him. But like he put out a tweet yesterday or 2 days ago about Bichette that was like kind of beyond what you would say is a normal level of praise for a player. He said on Saturday, Phillies are among a number of big market teams to have interest in Bo Bichette, an ultra young 27 free agent. Bichette is the only player to hit 300 versus fastballs, breaking balls, and also changeup splits. I was like, that seems like a lot of agent speak. That felt a little bit gross to me. That didn't feel like a very objective thing. So, okay. I forgot to mention this before. There is one thing that could happen that actually happened today that could make me feel a little bit better about the Eagles if they were to do it. I don't know if they will. I don't know if there's going to be any interest there, but there have been a lot of firings today. Jonathan Gannon fired by the Cardinals. Pete Carroll was fired by the Raiders. But there was a guy who was fired who has a very good relationship and has publicly expressed his respect for Nick Sirianni. And that is none other than Cleveland Browns now former head coach Kevin Stefanski. Now, I know some of you might be worried because we once had another Stefanski in this town and he ran the Sixers and it didn't go well. Good old Ed Stefanski. But Kevin Stefanski was fired by the Browns. He's a 2-time coach of the year. The past 2 years didn't go according to plan. There were some people who questioned and criticized his handling of Shedeur Sanders this year, the quarterback situation as a whole. But he and Sirianni have both been pretty damn positive in their praise for one another over the years. And it makes me wonder, Stefanski will have a lot of offers. Is there a scenario here where Stefanski comes in as an offensive special advisor? Remember, years ago, Fangio was brought in as a special advisor to the defense. And then the following offseason was hired as defensive coordinator. Now, again, I'm not saying that Kevin Stefanski is going to be so unable to find a job that he's going to want to be the OC next year for the Eagles. But man, like that would be my first call right now. As soon as he hit the market, Stefanski, advisor, offensive advisor, get another really bright mind in the room, maybe the only bright mind in the room offensively, and give him a shot. So we'll see. Let's see. Chris Freed says, rumor has it Stefanski is in line for the Giants job. We'll see. Maybe. Could happen. I don't know. All right. We've got that. What was the other thing? So we had news today that Matvei Michkov didn't skate. He wasn't out with the rest of the team. And apparently, Tocchet addressed it today. I guess Michkov took a puck to the foot. Trevor Zegras hit him with a pass in the third period on a power play, according to Jordan Hall. And so apparently, that was it. So Grabenkin appears like he was, I guess, taking Michkov's spot in practice. And it seems like, I don't know, like, is Michkov going to miss a game? Is he going to miss multiple games? Who knows? But this was Rick Tocchet a little bit earlier on today when asked about what's going on with Michkov and why he wasn't out on the ice. Was he traded?
I just saw him, but today I think he got shot off his flight. We didn't know till today. Like he complained about it, so he's getting checked out.
So Michkov didn't complain about getting or taking a puck to the foot the other day. It probably swelled up. That's the only guess, right? It probably swelled up over the last day or so. And so he came out of practice. All right, so we have that. Greg Bondarenko here says, can't wait for the FU Cutter chance tomorrow night. I mean, don't forget, tomorrow is going to be insane, right? January 6th, the insurrection game. Cutter Gauthier is going to storm the Xfinity Mobile Arena. So you've got Ducks and Flyers on Tuesday night. That was easily the best crowd the last time these two teams played. Gauthier and the Ducks against the Flyers. Remember, there were fuck you Cutter chants. There were Jamie's better chants. Gauthier got booed every time he touched the puck. It'll be interesting to see what this game looks like because Trevor Zegras playing against his former team for the first time. You have to imagine that there's going to be another level of emotion there, right? That is a team that, for better or worse, decided that Zegras was not going to be part of the future there. He's come over to Philadelphia and been pretty much a point-per-game player, fulfilling, what a lot of people expected him to be in Anaheim, and he's doing it here in Philadelphia. So you got to think he's going to be up for this game a little bit more than normal. Jamie Drysdale today was quoted as saying that, while he still has a little bit extra for this game, this year is really more about Zegras getting his first crack at his former team. So that's interesting. I think that's going to be an absolutely insane game. Absolutely nuts. I will note, we have 3 press row shows this week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Wednesday, we are at Chickies and Pete's in Glassboro, New Jersey. I think that's right on the campus of, or right next to Rowan University. So Wednesday night, if you're in the Glassboro, New Jersey area, don't forget to come out and support Snow the Goalie Radio. 6:00 start there as well. So we have a bunch of Flyers talk this week. Nick Abe says, do we think Cutter wants his revenge? Yeah, I would assume that Gauthier is going to score at least one. He's been on a heater this whole season. Gritty123 says, I am a Phillies fan living in Florida, and I will not be attending spring training this year. Stale product, and all the good players will be at the World Baseball Classic anyway. That's a good point. The latter point is a really good one. I think the Phillies they're really running the risk of alienating a lot of their fan base. Listen, you can be in that headspace of two things can be true. On one hand, John Middleton has spent a lot of money. He spent a lot of money on Bryce Harper. He spent a lot of money on Trey Turner. And obviously, very recently, a lot of money on Kyle Schwarber. And he spent money and assets to get Real Muto and spent money to get Castellanos and re-upped Zach Wheeler and gave Aaron Nola a lot of money, even though it wasn't a good signing. He's been willing to splash cash. It's just that the return on investment hasn't been very good for some of those players. And so it does feel like there has been a cap imposed, that there's been a financial restriction imposed on this front office. And if that's not the case, right? If John Middleton hears people criticizing him and saying that he's cheap and that, the reason the Phillies aren't doing anything is because he isn't letting Dave Dombrowski spend the money, then he needs to do a job of getting out in front of the public and saying, I have continued to give Dave Dombrowski the full access to this pocketbook, to this massive amount of money that I have on tap. I'm just waiting for him to bring me a player to spend that money on. Like Dombrowski's in a weird spot. Like if Middleton were to be like, well, no, I didn't put a cap on him. I told him to go out and get me the best players. If that's true and Dombrowski has just done what he's done so far this offseason, that would be a shame. If Bo Bichette becomes like a legitimate in-play target, that'd be cool. Like that would definitely improve the lineup. It would definitely improve this team, point blank. But man, it's hard to get excited for the Phillies right now. It really is. I think unless you're a true baseball diehard who's willing to watch 162 games of like really bad baseball. So like the 7 or 8 years leading up to the Harper era, and then certainly some very bad years in the 2000s. If you're willing to do that, then you're going to sit through this stuff no matter what. But the rest of us who like to watch a good baseball product, like it's going to be hard to get those people to come out to the park. If this roster is what starts the year, right? Even assuming like JT Realmuto comes back and or Ranger Suarez comes back, you've effectively run it back again. You made a couple of tweaks in the outfield. None of them are particularly inspiring. It's going to be hard to get the Phillies fans to come out early in the season again. Then you're looking at that almost self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, well, they'll show up later on when we start winning. Well, cool. But then you've pissed away half the season. You need to do something to get these fans excited about the team again. Otherwise, it just looks like you're running it back again, and that's not going to get the job done. It just won't. Landro says, Dombrowski should be on the hot seat. This offseason has been brutal. I agree. The only reason he wouldn't be on the hot seat is if Middleton is limited in him. That's it. There's no other way to make an excuse for this at all. Ford asks about why we haven't done a Chickies in Audubon. I don't know. I don't make the schedule. I don't. We've done Malvern, though. Malvern's close enough. Let's see. Brian Alton says, unpopular opinion, Harper is the McDavid of the MLB. It's unpopular because it's not even remotely close. Harper is nowhere near as good of a player as McDavid. I would even argue that at the peak of his powers, Harper wasn't as good as McDavid. Even at peak powers. I would say that Mike Trout, who I'm always critical of, Mike Trout or a Shohei Ohtani at peak powers is comparable to McDavid. I don't actually know who I would compare Harper to, but it wouldn't be McDavid. Now, if the argument here is that really, really good player on a team that like gets to the final game but can't get the job done, I guess there's a little bit there, right? Trout has never had the playoff success, has never gotten his team to a final, has never gotten to a World Series like Harper has. So maybe that's like where the comparison has to pivot a little bit, but I don't know. Nick Abe says the Dodgers spent a lot and look what happened. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I saw this too. Chris Reed says Hugh Douglas wants to be the next coach of the Falcons. I saw the clip going around, but then he also said that Joe Giglio is going to be the strength and conditioning coach. So I don't think it's true. I think Hugh Douglas like still has ties to Atlanta. Probably wouldn't be opposed to like getting a look at some kind of a coaching job with the Falcons if it were to present itself. But like he joked about taking Ike Reese with him, Joe Giglio to be the strength and conditioning coach. Like I don't actually know how serious he was about trying to be the head coach. IROC Philly says, didn't the roster win back-to-back Eastern Division titles? Yeah, cool. And how'd they do in the playoffs? How'd they do when the games actually mattered the most? Offense came up small. This offense is no better than it was a year ago. I don't know. Gritty says the best players in Philly's spring training camp are going to be Bohm, Garcia, and Marsh. Good God. Landro says limited budget, sure, but maybe move out some money. That's the thing is like, I thought they were going to move Bohm by now. I figured that they would have been able to move. Like, I don't know if they're like just kind of viewing not bringing back Ranger as savings that they could spin onto something. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. This one actually might be more fair. Although again, it comes down to the playoffs thing. Harper is like Austin Matthews. There could be some truth to that, but minus the postseason success or the same level of postseason success. That might be a more fair comparison though. Last thing that I wanted to get to, I just remembered this now. So we were talking earlier about how things are going for the Flyers prospects at World Junior. So Porter Martone had a really late goal to tie the game for Team Canada last night. It was an absolutely clutch goal. He was in front of the net. Things were great. Things were hunky-dory. He scores a goal, ties the game up. Canada goes on to lose the game. They're eliminated from the World Juniors. And now On the other side, Jack Berglund made some really good plays down the stretch, scored in the shootout to tie the game up. And I want to see when the final is, because I think that's going to be one that you almost feel like you have to watch. Now, the U.S. is out. Canada is out. When is the final game? Is it tonight? I think it might be tonight. Is it tonight? Is tonight the final game? I think it is. Yeah. Sweden plays Czechia, which I will still call the Czech Republic. They play at 7:30, right? Is it 7:30? I think it's 7:30. Canada plays Finland. So you're going to still get to see Porter Martone and Canada play one more game at World Juniors. You're going to get to watch Ruonen one more time for Finland. You're going to get to see Jack Berglund try to lead the Swedish team to a gold medal. And by the way, it would be cool if Berglund can get the win with Sweden. He was named captain of that team. He's risen to the moment. He's been a standout in this tournament. And everybody kind of went into it expecting to see Martone play really well. People wanted to see Jetlichenko do something of value. He hasn't. Berglund, to me, has been a guy that has almost become undeniable. He's certainly a guy that you're interested in the future of. Jetlichenko, though, Oh, Jetlichenko, he's a year younger than everybody else in his draft class. There's only so many spots available on the Canadian national team roster, and Jetlichenko's one of them. What does that tell you? He stinks. I don't care what anybody says. He stinks. Well, he's got a really good vision. He's a good passer. He's really fast. He's strong. Wait till he gets on a better junior team. Then he's really going to impress. Maybe. Wait till he gets to World Junior and he's surrounded by real talent. You'll see. He'll end up getting himself up in that lineup and he'll play really well and he'll take that confidence back to junior. This has been about as negative, I think, of an outcome as Jetlichenko could have had in World Junior. I'm pretty resolute in that belief. Lichenko, if he had even played remotely decently, maybe scored a goal, had 4 or 5 assists, was actively engaged in play. Remember, Canada won a game 9-1. He had no points in the game. I don't know. Cool. The people who want to defend the Jetlichenko pick continue to move the goalposts. Let's not move it is. Continue to move the goalposts. Beginning of the year, it was he needs to play for a better junior team. He got traded to one. He played okay, and then they went off to World Junior. So we'll give him a little bit of, all right, maybe it'll be better, right? We'll wait till he plays World Junior. He stinks. He's played 4th line wing, so he hasn't played his natural position. He was a high first-round pick. Sure, he wasn't the 6th pick in the draft, but 13, right? Flyers chose to move back, not take Sibuyan, who was traded for Quinn Hughes. Take Jetlichenko, and he stinks. At least as of now, he stinks. Maybe he'll get better. Maybe Jetlichenko will take this experience playing for Team Canada, and maybe he'll have a good bronze medal game, and maybe Jetlichenko will take that confidence back to junior, and maybe he'll become a 2-point-per-game player for the rest of the season, and then maybe he'll get to join the Phantoms at the end of the year or something for a playoff run, and then maybe next year he'll make the team out of camp and everybody will feel great, or maybe he'll go play for the Phantoms to start next year and he'll tear it up, and then the Flyers will bring him up and he'll be a legitimate NHL player. But man, there are so many it's a bunch of if-then statements to get you to Lichenko being a competent NHL player. And right now, I see all the ifs. I don't see how we get to the thens. I don't see how we actually get from if-then. We are at very much the if. If he gets moved to a better junior team, all right, that was one check. And the rest of the ifs are unaddressed. We'll see. We will see. Landro says, Luchenko's had some decent shifts, but he's been really disappointing in his play. Have to hope he can still develop further. Better hope so. Bonrenko says, hopefully he's better than Hathaway. You better hope. Nick Abe says, Jack Berglund is better than Lichenko. I will say, Berglund, to me, has kind of played himself into, consideration. When you talk about the better prospects in the system, the Flyers have been high on Berglund. we now have the opportunity to watch the guy play. If he helps Sweden win juniors, I tend to think he's going to get a look. Not now, but he's going to get a look. He's certainly going to get himself on the radar of this organization even more. So, all right. I think that's it. Yeah, I think it's everything I wanted to get to. Oh, no, it's not. We didn't even talk about the Sixers. The Sixers absolutely smashed the Knicks. And I know that the final score line looked a lot closer than it actually was, but like the Sixers dominated the Knicks in a way that like I wasn't even ready for. And like when you start to talk about like, can the Sixers actually get it done this year? Can the Sixers put it together? You know, we pulled up all the stats on Friday's show about just how well Joel Embiid has played recently, how great Tyrese Maxey has played, how legitimately VJ Edgecombe looks as a veteran versus like he looks like a seventh-year pro instead of a rookie, and yet he is a rookie. He played really, really well. Like here are some just higher level numbers from the Sixers 130-119 win on Saturday against the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. Embiid had 26 points. Maxey led the way with 36 points. VJ Edgecombe matched Embiid with 26 points. Paul George had 15 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. And you might look at that and say, wow, would have been nice to get more out of Paul George. Would it? I said this on Friday, man. If he's your number 3 option, or when all these guys are playing together, if he's your number 4 option and he slots in and just kind of does what's asked of him, guess what? The Sixers team has a really high ceiling. But there are so many ifs. It all comes back to ifs again. If Paul George is healthy, if Joel Embiid is healthy. I will point out that on the injury report that came out a little bit ago, Embiid is probable. It does feel like Embiid physically is in a better spot than we expected him to be. And it does feel like Embiid is going to maybe be more routinely in the lineup, which will allow him and the rest of the big four, right? The Sixers big four, to build chemistry that even when he's in and out of the lineup, they know how to play together. I will point out somebody, I don't remember who it was on Twitter, somebody mapped out 7 times that the Sixers ran the same pick and roll. I think it was in the third quarter of the game against the Knicks. 7 times. All 7 times ended with a different outcome, or I think it was 6 different players on those 7 actions all scored. Like 6 different players. 2 of them were 3-pointers by Paul George in the corner, catch and shoot threes. Fantastic. One was a VJ Edgecombe 3, I think. One was a VJ Edgecombe drive. Maxey had a drive. Embiid scored. Walker had the dunk, right? But that was with Edgecombe as the primary ball handler. And was it Barlow had another one? But it's amazing to see this pick and roll combo of Maxey and Embiid together executing at a high level and doing exactly what you always thought they could. If those, like, they have skill sets that match so well. And I'd even say, like, you can add in Edgecombe, you can add in Paul George, and I don't think it throws off anybody's game. They, as a top 4, right? Their games might actually mesh as well or better than just about any other big 4 in the entire league. The crossover ability, right? The Venn diagram of their skill sets, it works. It really does. So kudos to the Sixers. Kudos to Nick Nurse for figuring out how to put these guys in positions to all be successful and to maximize what they can do. But man, if you watched that game the other night and you didn't start to think about the Sixers team might actually be dangerous. You know, Carmelo said Paul George might be the best third option in the league. Philly could be a really tough out in the playoffs. If they play like they did the other night against the Knicks, this could be the best Sixers team that we've seen in a very, very long time. I get it. We've all been hurt by the Sixers before, but that Knicks game, that really got me feeling pretty damn good about your team, your town, your Philadelphia 76ers. So tonight, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to have the World Juniors pulled up. That'll be one thing. That'll be on one screen. That'll probably go on the new big TV. And then on a tablet or a phone, or maybe I'll get YouTube TV to do the multi-view. We'll have Sixers Nuggets on. Nikola Jokic obviously out. Jonas Valanciunas is out for the Knicks or for the Nuggets as well. Embiid should feast on the interior today. We will see if he does or not. But you got some games to watch tonight. We'll root for Porter Martone. We'll root for Jack Berglund. And we'll see how things finish up at World Juniors. We'll root for the Sixers tonight. And we'll feel pretty damn good about it. Okay? All right. I think that's it. I think that's all I wanted to get to today. We'll be back on Wednesday. We'll be back again on Friday. Don't forget, Press Row Show Tuesday night and Thursday night and Saturday night. Snow the Goalie Radio, Wednesday, 6 p.m. in Glassboro, New Jersey at the Chickies and Pete's near Rowan University. Come out. Let's have some fun talking puck this week. Big thank you to everybody who joined me live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. A big thank you to all of you who listen after the fact in the podcast feed. And a big thank you to all of the people who consume, like, comment on the short form content on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until Wednesday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Talk to each and every one of you very soon here on the Russ Joy Show.